All right. Welcome to the Wednesday, April 16th Rockport School Committee meeting. I'm going to call this to order. Just a note that we are being audio recorded and video recorded. For the record, we'll go around and introduce ourselves.
June Sanfilippo, Business Manager.
Mark Lorenz, School Committee Member.
Nicole Altieri, School Committee Vice Chair.
Kathy Riley, School Committee Chair.
Good evening, Mark Branco, Superintendent.
Amy Oakes, School Committee Member.
Jessica DeLisi, School Committee Member.
All right, great. Welcome, everyone. Our first item is the approval of the minutes from April 2nd, 2025. They were in the drive. Does anybody have any questions or corrections? Okay, great. We have a motion to approve the above minutes. Second?
Seconded.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. This evening, do we have any public comment? Please, yeah, come on.
Grab a seat, push the button so the green light goes on, and then give us your name and address.
Absolutely, thank you. Bill Tobin, 24 Beach Street. Hi, I'm here to, first of all, praise you. You got your budget passed, that's wonderful. I'm happy to see that at the town meeting, because as a former teacher, I like that. The next thing I wanted to ask you guys, have any of you ever thought that we could do a mock town meeting for the students? Not for the town. We might need that too. Has anyone ever thought of that? All right. Well,
I don't know, we have a civics curriculum.
No, so normally we won't go back and forth in public comment. If you want to give us your thoughts,
okay.
yeah, we'll take your thoughts.
All
and
right,
then,
good.
And then either I will respond back to you on behalf of the school committee after that.
Okay,
maybe
that
that's
would be fine.
Is that okay? So
Oh,
if you
that's-
want to just hit us with your thoughts, we'll do that way
That's
tonight.
right.
Okay.
And I would just like to invite you, if you are thinking of that, to go on rockportcivicleague.org, one word, and we have the town of Clinton's example. It's quite good. It's a nice video. I hope you would enjoy it. Okay? So, and please get back to me if you're interested. And I used to do this for Cambridge, and Cambridge voting system is probably the most complicated in the earth. A lot of numbers, quotas, all that stuff. All right? So I was, an AP US history teacher for many, many, many years in Cambridge. All right? So
That's perfect.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we're willing to help. The RCL would love to help with the League of Women Voters and so forth.
Thank you. That's a cool idea.
Thank you, thank you.
Dr. Branco, do we have any correspondence?
We do not.
Hey, how about donations?
We do have some donations. We'd like to thank Donald McAuliffe for donating 4 Bruins tickets, which are supporting the 8th grade trip to D.C., and Ali Favaza, some of my favorite books, who's donated a copy of Horton Hears the Who and Horton Hatches an Egg. Back adding those into our library. So thank you to both to Mr. McAuliffe and Ms. Favaza.
Okay, and do we have any personnel to cover tonight?
Do not.
Okay, and share the success. Do we have any news? I see we don't have a representative here, but do we have anything we want to share?
Tonight actually is, I believe, National Honor Society inductions, right? And while we have tried desperately to avoid school committee nights and have done a nice job the past 2 years, I think we were at the mercy of the Shaylin Lou schedule for this one. So I know Principal Rose is there, and along with some parents and students. So congratulations to those members. Spring sports is off to a great start. We've got a lot of teams out there. We've got some packed teams, lots of sub-varsity opportunities for kids, which is great. And I know our theater program is right in the middle of putting together their spring play schedule right now. If you haven't attended a concert in the past 2 weeks, that's surprising because there were so many concerts in the past 2 weeks between professional gigs and student concerts here for Rockport. The Shaylin Lou and our auditorium were packed. So we've had a great concert season. So thank you to our coaches for getting them ready, and thank you to the music staff for all the extended nights and hours that they're putting together.
Fabulous. Okay, let's move to the subcommittee updates. We have the policy subcommittee, a progress update, and then we'll do our first read.
All right, so the policy subcommittee did meet again. We sort of just tied up a few policies that we wanted to put our eyes on again. I think the superintendent will talk a little bit about some of those policies that went over with the admin team. So, and then we'll, as you mentioned, do our first read of Section J. So if you want to talk about those 3 or 4 policies.
So in your drive, you should have a set of PDF notes from the April 2nd meeting and the April 7th meeting. And Ms. Oakes did unbelievable work here keeping us on paper so that we knew what the heck we had just done. So hopefully you've had time to go through those pages of notes. We've done hopefully a really good job of capturing kind of the why behind all of the work. And you'll see a couple highlighted sections on the notes. So what we discussed tonight were just some spots where we had some questions. So before we open it up to the committee for questions on this before the first read, I just wanted to talk through some of those changes. So JLCDD is called Managing Life-Threatening Allergies in Schools. That was one that the consultant flagged as a Rockport-only policy. It wasn't brought into play until around 2007, 2008. We had some questions about why it exists. So I had met with our school nurse to go through the entire document and recognize that it's all redundant when it comes to MGL and it comes to best practices. And it actually had some interesting information that might not be factual around allergies triggering 504s automatically, which is not necessarily the case. So that policy is going to be dropped because we do have our own in-house protocols around healthcare action plans, and we do have 504s in place.
This is too much. This is our first read? Is this the very first time we've talked about all of our J policies? Okay.
But what I want to do is just for those 4, because you had left them open, I want to just bring those 4 up to speed, and then
Okay.
I'm going to stop talking and open it up for school
Okay.
committee discussion, if that's okay.
Just because there are so
Yep.
many J
Yep.
policies
Yep.
that folks might also be
Yeah.
curious about.
Yeah.
I don't know if these are more important than the rest. They're just the last.
Yeah, I just felt they were the only ones that were highlighted as hanging.
Sure.
School choice was another one. We had a concern when you look at the school choice policy around one sentence that made it look like we were not going to let students continue if there had been a funding mechanism issue, and so we felt like that was out of practice with Rockport and best practices, so that gets dropped. Student discipline was one that we returned to. We've run that by Anne Marie's office, and that it aligns with the work that our attorney has done with us. And potassium iodide is another one that we looked at, KI tablets, that does not need to be in here because after talking with the town administrator, the town has their own protocols for dealing with the fact that we are a second zone fallout from Seabrook. So that can come out of school committee policy and stay where it belongs with the town protocols.
Is there a policy for children during an emergency?
Well,
In
it's
the
all
towns?
in our COP plan. Yeah, our safety plan. Yep. So at this point, I'll stop going through those 4 and leave it up to you to decide. I think your best bet would just be, since you've had time to look at the notes, does anybody have anything that jumps out at them? And keep in mind, this is a first read, so you can ask some questions tonight, take your first read, and still come back 2 weeks from now and take another bite at it with the second read.
One thing I might say is that either at our last meeting or the meeting before, a question came up about technology, and we sort of talked about why had it dropped out of Section E, and so I would just call to our attention the fact that it does reappear in Section J, so we haven't forgotten that. And I think J is really where so much finally came together for us, because there were places where we had stopped and said, we can stop, we can hold some of these policies because they're going to come back when we talk about policies with students, alcohol, tobacco, technology, all those kinds of things. In some ways, I think Section J is the most interesting policy because it's really what touches students. Pages of
I
policies.
think that what I noticed was the technology that dropped out of E, sort of talking about cell phones and things, doesn't necessarily reappear it does reappear because we're talking about technology, but the more appropriate place for it too is in the handbook where it talks about like before it was a policy saying in elementary school you cannot use your phone in X, Y, and Z. So
Right.
that language, it seems, is in the handbook. So therefore, and that's more appropriate because it's a procedure,
Right.
not the policy.
Right, and if you remember last year, if you go into the handbook, you'll see the electronic device. And if you remember, I believe Principal Rose came last year with a brand-new updated procedure that was put together for this year. And they have continued to pilot that, and by all reports, 6th through 12th grade has gone much differently. And you know, this is still one of those interesting conversations at the state level where the state is still talking about legislating this behavior. So it would not surprise me to see some action taken by the legislature to try to put some kind of cell phone prohibition in place in public schools.
I guess the other thing I would say for the benefit of the committee, because there's so many pages to go through, is that in general, what we've done all the way along is we've compared the Rockport version to the MASC version. If MASC is more up to date, if it is more in aligned with Massachusetts general laws, if it's more succinct, we will adopt the model policies so long as it doesn't change what we do. There have been times throughout the past 2 years where we've sent the superintendent back to double check to make sure that what's in the MASC policy matches our actual practice. So we've done that. And in general, we've opted for shorter is better. If there's stuff that seems absolutely out of date, we have recommended dropping that all the way through, not just in Section J. And Jess mentioned something earlier about inconsistencies in things like the words we use to refer to students. Every once in a while, the word child pops up. And so I think those are the kinds of things that'll get addressed at the end. You can do a search all the way through a document to look for words like that and replace words with more current terms that are used now. Yeah.
So that's going to be our final step after we do a first read tonight. We'll do a second read on May 7th, as well as a full adoption on May 7th, to hopefully go live in July. But then before we push that button and work with MASC to host it on their server and to have it live on our website on July 1st, we're going to sit down with Alicia, probably myself and Jody and Amanda, whoever else is going to read, and just make sure we've done a really thorough. We're going to compare all of Ms. Oaks' notes with all of the changes and really do a crosswalk. So the hope is I'll be able to just tell Kathy that it's ready to go at that point.
Question.
Yep.
So I'm seeing in some of the policies, they're more general. And so my assumption is that there is a student handbook that covers some of these things that are a little more nebulous. Okay, because like for dress code, it's pretty wide open, and I'm not saying, but what happens is that it leaves it up to interpretation, and so then we get a real not always a clear-cut way to deal with it. I'm assuming in the handbook we see more guidelines, but it's not policy.
Right, we had to do
How do we address that?
real
Yeah.
conversations around the difference between policy and practice and policy and protocols. And so this particular policy book was pretty thick with practices and protocols, which should be either addressed through administrative documents, managerial work, and either a staff handbook or a student handbook. Dress code might be a bad example because in Massachusetts it's a pretty liberal situation, yeah. But technology is a good example where you're not going to name a product, right, because products change. So you're not going to name a cell phone or name a Chromebook, for example. You're going to have an acceptable use practices and expectations. The tools change all the time, and then internally, yes, we'll have cell phone expectations.
I think the dress code is a great example of something for us to just briefly touch on. When I looked at it, I realized, this is a state level thing. And my question, because I'm relatively new to the state was, well, what about a T-shirt with drugs and alcohol or hate speech? And the answer is, that's when you look at the drug and alcohol policy, and that's when you look at the bullying policy, and that's when you look at the hazing policy. And so you put the restrictions around behaviors rather than around student dress or student garments. And I thought that was the beauty of having a consultant from MASC who could help us understand the way you address this issue is over here rather than right here. Very, very interesting. She was quite knowledgeable, and I thought, oh, so long as everybody understands where to go to find it, I think that the language is there. But I asked some questions when we got to that one as well, because it's really quite broad.
And that could, if there aren't answers anywhere else, that leads to finger pointing and,
Yes.
and everything else. So
Yes.
great. I'm glad that it's addressed.
I was just going to add to that. I like how you said that so many times it's one policy supporting another policy somehow, so that connection along with the procedures. But also, like with the dress code one, a lot of the references that's something that I really tried to focus in on is once there was the MGL, having the mask consultant there to highlight which ones are really more important with those MGLs. And to me, that's also why a lot of them sometimes seem kind of, as you said, nebulous or vague. But once you look at that MGL, it's like, okay, this is why we're doing this, is because we want to make sure we're in compliance, and we're not going to mess with that.
And the flip side of that is the bullying and harassment policy is like 6 pages long, right? So there are some places legally where we are told by the attorney and the consultant and the state through MGL that this has to be clearly spelled out. So there are some that remain 4, 5, 6 pages.
And I think if you went through the hundreds of policies, you would find very, very, very few that do not reference MGL or a federal statute in some way. The policy book is completely grounded in all of that, and that's why it's possible to have a state-level organization help us. And I think in a place as small as Rockport, we are smart to rely on the expertise of somebody at the state level, at a state-level organization that serves school committees, because I cannot imagine how somebody would have enough time with all of the tasks on people's lists in a really small district. I just don't think it would be possible for anyone other than the superintendent to have that level of knowledge. And I think our consultant really served us well. And so we've said goodbye to her until next year. Actually, we're done. This is the end. This is the last section that we have for all of you. We're kind of excited.
Not that you didn't love having her around, I'm sure. But yeah.
It's fine if you have questions to ask.
So if you have
There
questions
are more questions
specifically-
about Section J, it's fine to ask.
for it.
And if you're good, you can
Okay.
seek a motion tonight.
Need my cheat sheet. Okay, this is fabulous. Okay, so do I have a motion to accept the clean versions of the presented policies as a first read? Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
So just before we move on, just a matter of protocol, so we'll know what will happen. At the next meeting, we'll do a second read. And then Alicia is sending me formal language to adopt full policy book. So we'll do both of those moves at the next meeting. And my recommendation will be that we move to not have them go live until July 1st so that we can continue our school year with the current policy book. And also give us time to work with MASC to host it on their server, work with Mike Montgomery to make sure we know how we're doing that on our end. And it gives us time as a leadership team to review all of the policies that will potentially impact how we manage the school district moving forward in kind of a thoughtful way.
Will that be on the 30th or more the 7th?
The 7th.
The 7th,
Yep.
okay.
Yep. Okay.
Let's see. Okay, next, the Communication Advocacy Subcommittee. We don't have a report at this time? Okay. Great, and the
Just
school,
have a quick.
okay.
Yes. The School Wellness Advisory Committee met today, and I wasn't able to go because I had a work commitment. But we have decided to move the Community Play Day event to the fall. I think everyone got really excited planning this and thinking about how great it was going to be and doing all our tasks for it and everything. And then we're realizing as it got closer and closer, like the end of the year is a super busy time for staff, for our seniors that were helping us. And it was also going to be the weekend before Motif Day. So, which are, well, Darlene and Erin and Amanda and everyone is very involved in that. So we are going to be having that in the fall, and I will update as soon as we have a date for that.
Thank you, and looks like there's no unfinished business, but we can move on to new business.
So we have special guests with us tonight.
I know you really want Julie, but
We'll start with Jody.
you have to suffer through me first. So the Student Opportunity Act, which we talked about the plan last year, was written as a 3-year plan last year, and we have to provide progress updates once a year until we rewrite again in the spring of 2027. So I just wanted to review that with you. This one does not need a vote. This is just the progress update, but you guys need to be informed of what we are doing, how the progress has gone, and what we plan to change in the program. And just a reminder that the Student Opportunity Act is in place to address inequities in education, so to help bridge those learning gaps between student subgroups and that type of activity. So this is a reminder of what our evidence-based programs were in the 3-year plan. So these were the 3 EBPs, which are those programs. The first, the Effective Student Support System, is really around our continuous cycle of improvement and our MTSS planning, where we're building a really focused data-informed system to address currently academics. We need to expand to social emotional learning and behavior as a whole. The second one, supporting curriculum implementation, is really supporting all of the high-quality instructional materials that we've implemented, that they're in place, and we need to improve our Tier 1 instruction based on those implementations. The 2 big things in that one were we added the instructional coach and some more literacy PD. And the third one, the targeted academic support, is really evidence-based supports that are aligned with DESE's educational vision. That vision is that with individualized supports, all students should be able to excel at or above grade level. So that the learning acceleration model with the Tier 1 and Tier 2 supports that we've been talking about, the just-in-time support, is what's going to help those students actually access grade level so they're not always behind trying to catch up. So you have the copy of the full plan. I just pulled out some points that we could go through just to give an overview of the different areas that we had to submit to the state. And the first group of implementation activities is about the effective student support system. That is what we talked about with the MTSS model, which I'll speak more about in the next slide. And we put in the WIN practices and a lot more PD in that area. The analytic view is still a work in progress. That'll be rolled out to full staff for next year. That's the data visualization program that'll help us use data-based information to create our cohorts and develop our learning instructional models for the supports for students. The second group is under that supporting curriculum implementation. Like I spoke already, the PD and the instructional coach, and we ran 2 curriculum review teams this year. We reviewed 6 through 8 science to choose a new high-quality instructional program, which we have actually put off, which I will update you when we do curriculum updates at the end of the year. And right now, the 10th and 11th grade U.S. history is reviewing resources for them for next year. And the third group is all around the targeted supports and the acceleration model. And this was where we added the acceleration support specialists, which I'll talk about more as we move forward. The early evidence of change is a significant positive shift in the data analysis practices. That is really a lot in part to Dr. Branco coming in and doing the protocols with the MCAS analysis, which is now spread to all of our smaller level data meetings that run by a protocol. It's really giving us better focus on the data as a whole instead of a lot of anecdotal discussion about student behavior. The acceptance of Julie as the instructional coach has been fabulous. There's a lot of positive feedback around that. Our content teachers in the middle school are teaching WIN blocks, and there's been a lot of positive feedback about our PD opportunities that we've offered as well. And then in terms of closing the gaps, in the full report, there is some data there for you to review. But for me, I find it really premature, preliminary data to really share in depth. Because we focused our metrics on end of the year data and the next year's MCAS data. So a lot of these plans reference the 2024 MCAS data, but we didn't start putting this plan into place until this school year. So there are some really significant gains for our students with disabilities compared to all students. But I don't want to make that the huge highlight, because when we get to the end of the year data, then we'll have a better idea of whether this is an anomaly or really a trend in all of the data models. Some key changes to the plan are, we ran our, what did we call it? Steering committee, our MTSS steering committee in 23-24. And then coming into this year with staffing shifts and leadership shifts, we didn't really have a way to run that program. So it's being shifted into my office now, which makes a lot more sense, because now we can tie it to instructional leadership. We can tie it to the curriculum coordination teams. We can tie it to people who have control over scheduling, services, and staff. So that's moving. The analytic view cost way less, which is the data analytics program, than we thought it was going to. We had projected that it was going to be a lot more money, so we have a savings of $22,000 there. Not that that came out of our budget, it was just a projected cost. And then in shifting around some of that money, we're able to implement MyFlex Learning at the high school, which will help schedule WIN for high school students. So staff can go in and schedule the students for who they need to see, and then the students can go in and schedule themselves if they're not already scheduled. So we'll know where every student is without having to go to a Google Sheet to find that. It integrates with Aspen. So those are the changes, and then the next big steps are listed out. But we are contracting with Mertens through Anne-Marie's office to provide some more PD and inclusive practices. We're going to continue to expand and develop MTSS. I think my focus for MTSS will actually be develop an action plan for moving forward in that area. I spoke about the PD already. The literacy review. So next year will be our third year with our ELA, HMH into reading. So it'll be time to do a literacy review again, and that seems soon. And it doesn't mean we'll change, but we have to do that before we do a new contract, and it'll give us the opportunity to include K through 12 staff on that review to see what the program has to offer. And then we need to ensure that our 6 through 12 acceleration specialists, who we shifted with reassignments last year, actually support what they are supposed to support, because they were pulled to really cover a lot of IEP services this year with the new middle high school schedule and the staffing shifts, and with Anne-Marie and Paula Donnelly, who's our current SPED facilitator, looking at the way that we're delivering SPED services. That should not, I've been promised that will not be a problem again next year, and we'll have those two people to support literacy and math in 6 to 12. Which will shift over into MTSS, so I don't know if you have any questions about the SOA plan
Yeah, why don't we
itself.
take one each section at a time, because it's a lot of information. A lot of it is redundant purposefully, right? So as you see that, but I think it makes sense to pause. The only thing I want to highlight before you ask questions is this is a lot of foundation building, and at some point, I agree with Jody that it's premature to highlight pockets of student data at this time, but that's what we all want to do. We want to talk about student outcomes. We want to talk about growth and achievement. We want to talk about closing the gap. We had so much foundational work to do Doesn't mean we weren't doing good work prior to starting all of this. We had hardworking teachers knocking themselves out to meet the needs of kids, but with better structures, with implementation of technology, with professional development, with the right people supporting the work, then I'm confident that when we finally can put the data in front of the school committee, in front of parents, in front of the public, we'll be able to thoughtfully talk about, the gaps that we've closed. And I just don't want to rush it, nor do I want the committee or the public to think, wow, you're moving so slowly that kids haven't benefited from this. They have benefited enormously from having professional coaching and professional development and PD in other areas, and from us really tightening up in our curriculum review processes. And ultimately having a data warehouse is a game changer for a small little district like this, where we'll be able to look at everything from attendance to progress academically and socially and emotionally, and put our fingers on that and really help good teachers make good adjustments in the classroom.
All right, thanks. You had mentioned that you are using a protocol that was developed for a lot of these data reviews. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, maybe what that protocol is, without kind of going into any student outcomes like you just mentioned, but just kind of the picture. What does that protocol entail? What does it look like when you're meeting with teachers, and how is it then being used, I guess?
It depends on the time of year. So the MCAS protocol is specifically focused to the outcomes for the MCAS and the different categories we look at. The beginning of the year data, we looked at that through a lens of reflecting where the students were and what kind of instructional practices would support changing that from there. The focus in the fall was taking the data and creating action steps to make a difference in the student outcomes. When we came into the spring, we shifted the whole data protocol around taking a step backwards and looking at the data without student names at all, so that we could focus on what were the trends in all of the different areas of the data, and then taking a step back and looking at the action plans from November to see if things were done that the grade level team said that they would do between November and the February date, and oddly enough, much of it wasn't done. So now our data protocol will always address the last action steps. Our last item will be action steps, and our first item in the next meeting will be looking at those action steps. I'm just trying to think of some of the specific areas. It's like we try to look at, when you look at the top 10% or the bottom 20%, what were the standards areas that you were seeing where the gains were, or where the areas of needs of improvement were. But we really made this shift, and it was kind of a heavy lift working with coordinators to get them to see the benefit, because it's really hard to change practices. But to take away the student names and look at the overall data, we were able to look at the cohort of students and make shifts for everybody, and then at the end we can take those bottom 20% or top 10 and focus on, now we can look at our acceleration specialists, our reading specialist, and focus on how are we going to support those students in that tier 1 or tier 2 model. So we've used a bunch of different ones, a lot of research into what works best, and then really taking them and making them work for Rockport.
Do you feel like that will sort of continue next year with that fall?
Absolutely, and now
everybody
everybody else is on
Similar
board
routine,
that this is the way to make sure that those data meetings are more meaningful. Because we spend a lot of time. We take PLC time from the staff for them to do this during the school day. So there's a lot of time. So we need it to be meaningful. We need it to make a difference. Like Mark said, we need to start focusing on what the outcomes actually look like.
I wanted to just ask a little bit of, because we the general overview is great, but I'm just curious. We've talked a lot about the win blocks. I know they're going to be expanding. I understand sort of the purpose of them, but could you explain, like, what does that look like? Like, what is happening in Robin Crocker's classroom in her win block? What is, or Carrie Herman's classroom, or whoever? How is that, like a tier 1 thing? Is it
It's kind of an in between a tier 1 and a tier 2, and if you hold that one is in the next
it is
section.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, everything is so intertwined. That's why we put it all together. So the Student Opportunity Act interacts with the MTSS because that's one of our evidence-based programs. And then the instructional coach is a part of all of this. So that's why we grouped them all together tonight. But WIN is definitely in my
So we'll talk a little
MTSS
bit
piece.
more about
We'll
like,
talk a
what
little bit more
what
about that.
exactly it is. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry not to know this. Maybe everybody else does. I'm a little embarrassed to say that this is. I'm struggling to think about whether we talked about an SOA plan last year. We did, and I was just so new that I was overwhelmed. So this marries our district improvement plan. It's a state mandated piece that we merge with the rest of the work that's going on.
Yes,
but
they're
this
all intertwined. They're all related. So the Student Opportunity Act came out with it's Mass General Law, came out in 2019. What it does is it provides a funding model, which is a modified Chapter 70 funding, plus they created a trust fund, plus there's all the grants, competitive grants. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm getting old. The competitive grants, and that money is distributed in a way not specifically just given it to us in this funding formula, but it helps support all these different areas of growth. What they did is they developed an educational model that gave them an advisory council, gave them the trust fund, and gave them educational programming. So last year, the first one came back right around COVID, and there was a plan written, and then nobody in Rockport really looked at it again. So because of COVID, the dates got shifted, and last spring it snuck up on us, and we realized we had to write a new 3-year plan.
That was
if
my
you
question.
remember.
Is this our second 3-year plan? But
This is our second 3-year plan.
yes, but the first one was, I would imagine, like many things, just completely overwhelmed by COVID.
Completely overwhelmed by COVID, but also brand new. And
Yes.
I don't think there wasn't a lot of stakeholder buy-in. I don't think it was something that the school committee had input in. I don't think people asked stakeholders to take part in the development. I think it was written as a one-off by one person in one building. So there were very limited, targeted goals, which when you create this, it's a drop down that DESE provides in their GEMS grants management system that you pick out these BPs and then you pick out the targeted focuses areas under them. So one of them, I think in the first plan, was very pre-K specific focused, which when Mark asked me to write this last April, if you remember, you voted on it late because I found out late because we were late, but we tried to build something that was connected to the SDI that was more focused on K-12, pre-K-12.
And so I think part of what I wonder is, does this create more paperwork, or is this useful, or both?
It creates what Massachusetts like to call, you don't usually put these two words together, flexible accountability, right? So it is the state's way, again, of trying to set the bar high for all of Massachusetts school districts, theoretically in an equitable way. And we're allowed to kind of flex with a menu of options to say this is what the professionals in Rockport believe we need to do to move the bar. We'll do it in your format. And I do think what we're hearing tonight and what we'll continue to hear is that it's going to tighten up our practices. It's going to make us better teachers, and it's going to have positive outcomes for kids. It's just coming out of a flexible accountability model.
I think it is making us more accountable for what we're doing as well. These are now the SDI, the SOA. I hate all the acronyms, but they are all something that we are focusing on. We look at them in the curriculum coordinators meeting. Everybody knows what they are now. When we talk, the PD committee, the professional development is connected to something in the SDI. So we have goals in the SDI, we have goals in the professional development plan, and we have goals in the SOA. It really helps us focus and move forward. Yeah, it's a lot of paperwork. And using the GEM system is not fun. So that's why these documents are created not in GEMS, because it's way more user-friendly to read and move forward. But I have learned a lot. I've appreciated it, and I think it's helped us move everything that we're doing forward, whether it's curriculum or instruction, or assessment practices, or even our professional development. But I also think it's a way for the state to justify the state and the local aid going to support closing these achievement gaps. Yeah, so this is the MTSS model, and the state has jumped into this, and they have shared their vision of what it should look like. And then I also gave you guys the educational vision that I talked about before, because I think that's really important. We need to start talking about that in all of these documents and procedures and protocols and practices that we're putting in play. You can go. So what I threw up here is actually what MTSS is, because I don't think we've ever talked about that. We've thrown around the acronym and talked about multi-tiered system supports, and we're doing this and we're doing that. But right now, for us, it is still really in the development phase. We worked with that steering committee to identify what data did we have, what data we were collecting, where were we. There's a philosophy that if you don't have 80% of the students meeting what they need to meet, achieving where they need to achieve, then you can't even start looking at the top 15 in tier 2 and the top 5 in tier 3. But we don't believe that's true. We need to work on all of this and move forward. So this just kind of explains that the tier 1 is the gen ed classroom, the core programming, what everybody gets. The tier 2 is core plus supplemental, whether that's push in or pull out with the support through a WIN model. Or other kinds of small group supports. And then tier 3 is not special education. It's the core plus the supplemental plus more intensive instruction. And there's different ways to intensify instruction. So with our tier 1, with the implementation of all our new high quality instructional materials and our instructional coaching, that's where we're focusing our energy right now, because that is 80% of the students. And the PD that we've offered, and then universal design for learning, is what really in 612 is working to improve the tier 1 practices there. That's more the way that the information is presented to the students, the way the students are able to show what they've learned in different kinds of ways, and ways to make it more personalized and interest-based for the students to engage in. So we are really working hard on that tier 1 model, and that is where the instructional coach is actually working. She's working in the tier 1 in the classrooms. She is modeling, and she'll talk about that very soon, so I'm not going to steal all of her thunder. Tier 2 is where we're building that acceleration support. So if there are a cohort of students who need that just-in-time scaffolding under the acceleration model, so they can be in a grade level classroom or access modified grade level curriculum, they're there to support them at that time. Or if they're pulling them out in small groups and giving them skills practice or any kind of enrichment strategies. So in WIN, at the elementary school, we have just piloted. So in November, we did one 45-minute WIN block focused on social emotional learning, because we thought that was the easiest lift. In February, we did one 45-minute on literacy, where the staff actually grouped their students by ability levels, and they all went off with a grade level planned lesson. It wasn't really differentiated at that time, so that's where we need to move to, because WIN is what I need. The lesson should be targeted for the actual small student groups. Right when we come back from vacation, we'll be doing a math WIN, which is now focused on math skills, but also differentiated with the grade level classrooms picking their groups. In the middle school, WIN is different. WIN is we took the data, we picked the groups, we took the kids who needed the most support in ELA or math, and they went with the content level teacher. They get to be with them 3 times out of 6 in the cycle, working on the specific skills based on the data that they need to improve. So each quarter we've looked at the data again, and we've changed those cohorts at each quarter. One grade level in particular in one subject area, because we're so small, I'm not going to mention who, that staff member wanted to keep his same students, his probably gave it away, at least what grade level, right? Kept his same students for 3 quarters in a row. And I can tell you that we have seen the most gains with that model. Those students kept targeting the skills that they needed. That's not going to be what everybody needs, because we should use the progress monitoring data to either gradually release those students from the need, but we also don't want to leave out the other kids who need to rotate in. So in science and social studies, that's been a different model. Those teachers have had bigger groups of students, which they switch off on semesters, and they teach something that is more content related something that they wouldn't probably be able to get to within the classroom. So more of an extra activity, enriching their curriculum, adding more skills. Robin Crocker actually has taught math skills in hers. So everybody has done something different. Carrie Herman does this little CNN News stuff and has used Scholastic News. So every science and social studies is different based on what they've decided to do. Not all of them, 67% of them are loving having those students with them and them getting to see how the kids are responding to the support. Usually these are kids who might be on an IEP and getting services from a SPED liaison or some other form of using the acceleration specialist. And most of our staff has been like thrilled to be able to work with those students themselves. They haven't had the time to do that in the past. At the high school, it's more of the teachers ask the students to come to them who they need, or the students go to where they need. But with the programming next year, we're hoping to make the whole What I Need for all 3 buildings a more focused endeavor. So then the tier 3 is really in development. We're working with the instructional leadership team. Sorry, not the instructional, this IST. Instructional support team. That's not the name of it. I can't remember. It used to be Child Study, it used to be PIPS, and now it's IST. It'll come back to me again, but that is run by the psychologists in the building. So if you have a student in need, you bring that student to that team and they work together to figure out what supports they need, and it's data-based. So merging all of this together is a way to really focus the progress monitoring are on kids making the grades that they need, or do they need to move on to tier 3 for intensified support. So again, this is all a big work in progress. But we'll get there. I think an action plan is the best way to make sure that we move this forward in a systematic manner.
I think a couple interesting things to hear in this conversation is the content professional delivering support to the kids who struggle in that content. That should, to the public, sound like a no-brainer. It's sadly not in a lot of places. If my child struggles in math, I want a math professional working with my child. If they're struggling with reading, I want someone with an ELA reading background working with my child. No different than if they had a need to see a therapist. I would want the right therapist working with my child. So the WIN model, particularly, and this tier 2, tier 3, having the right coaches and the right people in place is going to allow kids to get access to the content professional. That's a big shift. This is all regular education, general education. It's all general education services. A colleague said the other day, general education classes don't exist anymore, was how this person phrased it to me. And I said, I think it's a good thing. We're just going to call every classroom an inclusion classroom because we're differentiating based on the highs and lows and the needs of every child. This is not about special ed or general ed. This is about meeting the needs of however many kids are in your classroom. And so this is what the classroom looks like. And some of us are old enough to remember what it was like to be taught to the middle or to teach to the middle and deal with the bell curve concept. And we've learned a lot about the human brain and about teaching children differently nowadays. So I think this is a heavy lift. We've got a lot of people invested in this. And to be fair to the teachers, it's a shift. It's a mind shift. It's a skill set shift and development for them. And to give a 45-minute block 3 times in a 6 cycle, that's a good chunk of time to give to a child who struggles in an area. And if your child's not identified in the struggle area, that's where you were asking, so what's happening in Ms. Herman's room, for example? They're getting extensions. They're getting deeper content area learning that they would not get in the rapid pace of the typical school year. So it really is an opportunity for us to extend broadly and meet the needs of kids in a unique way. And I'm excited to see what happens in year 2 and year 3, and I'm excited to see what the elementary pilot tells you all to do moving forward.
Yeah, I think the focus on the equitable access and not having these kids always trying to catch up. There are ways to change how you present the grade level material or, differentiate it or figure out scaffolding and supports. Even if you're modifying, then even the lowest learners can still access something at their grade level. And that's a big shift.
And to get the high school students to be invested in their own learning and to be able to articulate and or recognize what they need, a 14 or a 15-year-old, or to be able to realize, oh, geez, I have to go see Ms. Oakes for my math class. I'm really struggling there. And if I don't see it, then she can push the button in the new product and get me there. And so there's those conversations. The hope is you're fostering the students' ability, particularly as they get through high school, their ability to make good choices and identify their own need and what it takes. I think that's how you send kids off to college and career, to be able to advocate for themselves and recognize who they are as a learner or who they are as a developing professional.
This is great. I feel like I understand MTSS well for the, we always throw it around, but like you said, I sort of had an idea about this. I feel like this really, for a non-educator, I'm able to really have a vision of what's happening for kids in the school, students. We're not saying child or kids.
Yeah, and I left out all the fancy graphics, but when you'll see an umbrella, and all of this fits under the umbrella. But I had too many words to fit on the page. So.
Just a kind of back to my previous question about the protocols and the data reviews you do. Are those driving what's happening sort of in a day-to-day instruction with teachers teaching the standards, or is that more targeting this tier 2, or a little bit of both?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. But right now it's shifted to more on the tier 1, the classroom strategies to focus on the big group and or to differentiate within the big group. And then the small component of that is our acceleration specialists, our reading specialists are then planning for those smaller tier 2 groups.
Okay.
We've had a lot more buy-in on the push-in model of the tier 2, the support in the classroom, because we're breaking down into small little groups. They're doing station rotation or doing a teacher table. So now that interventionist is the former name, our acceleration specialist is in the room with their own small table working with their group.
And in many cases, when you walk by, you'll see all students in a variety of small groups, right? So it's not like those of us who grew up with the Redbirds and the Bluebirds and different reading groups, we all knew who the Redbirds and the Bluebirds were. Now, everybody's cycling through small group activities, meeting their needs. So I think that's kind of a nice, we're not watching 4 kids get pulled out and pushed back in. So the more adults and the more push-in we can do in a supported way and keep students with their peers accessing grade level curriculum and content, we should be using language much less around kids being below grade level, and we're shifting to they're just not there yet. We're getting closer.
For you in particular to think about it, it's like we used to focus on the data and look at one assessment at a time, and now we're kind of looking at merging it all together and looking for the trend and asking, why do we think? What are the root causes for where the weaknesses are? And now we can look at it across 3 or 4 different assessments, which we've had many conversations about over assessment, but I think everybody's seeing what the need is for having, the small literacy screener versus the content curriculum program based diagnostic, and now our outside benchmark, because we can merge it all together and look at the data overall. And Julie's been one of the people who've made these really great one-pager data sheets so that everybody can see where is this class overall. And that generates some much deeper conversations as opposed to Johnny is in the bottom 5%, he always has, and this is the reason. And people make up the reasons based on their own, internal thoughts about a student versus looking at the data and let's figure out where is this across the board problem? Is it a cohort problem? Is this one student problem?
But it really is amazing how it supports the SDI with growth and achievement, professional development, the programming. It's all, it's a direct tie to all that.
I'm not sucking up, but I do think this is a direct, result of Mark's being an instructional leader. And now, we have the DLT is really focused on instructional, and we have updates just like you do every week about where these different committees are and what's happening on the PD committee. But we've also developed an instructional leadership team, a smaller leadership team of the principals and Anne Marie and myself, and we get to talk about how to improve instructional practices too. So I think there's a lot of good things going on. I I wasn't sure that this was really the job that I wanted, but I am happy in it now. It's like we're being able to make some shifts and changes that I think are going to end in some really positive outcomes.
I think the other reason that we have to go slow to go fast is that, and I mean this as highly respectfully as it can come out, teachers aren't data experts. We didn't go to undergrad and graduate school. Most of my classes at those two levels had nothing to do with data analysis, unless I foolishly went into leadership and admin. That's when I got them, right? So we have highly qualified teachers and instructors. So what we needed was systems in place and the right professionals in place to call the data, to bring it to you as a teacher, to then say, okay, this is what the data is telling us. So we're not asking them to crunch and analyze too much. They are part of that process, but that's not the majority of a teacher's skill set, quite honestly. And I think that's where this breaks down in a lot of districts is they're thrown into a model and they're asked to do all this data analysis without protocols or without practice or without other professionals around them to support them. So I do think I want to say thank you to the teachers who are, recognizing that this is the direction we're going and how it's going to impact kids, but also let them know that we know that that's not why they went into teaching in the first place. It wasn't to crunch data. It was to really be effective in the classroom. So the hope is that that's what's going to happen here.
You're up. Your turn.
All right, good evening. For those of you who do not know me, I am Julie Raftelis. I have been an employee of the Rockport Public Schools for exactly 30 years this year. Doesn't seem possible, but it is true. I was first hired as a first grade teacher. I matriculated up to third grade, fourth grade, was kicked back down to first grade, and then decided to move on to second grade when opening did happen. That was probably my favorite place to be. My recently retired friend Jen Dahlgren was who I worked with, and we developed Team 2, as some of you fondly remember. The opportunity to become the Title I reading interventionist came about, and I opted to take that job as well. And prior to my new position, that is where I was for the past 7 years, being a reading interventionist and working with students more in the classroom than out, which was a nice model shift for us. And then this opportunity came about to become the instructional coach. And I said, well, why not? I believe in the theory that learning is change, and you have to always push yourself and drive yourself to learn more and more so that you become better at your practice. So that is what I did. So you may ask what an instructional coach is, and I actually looked up online an actual definition for you, so you would have that. And it is, an instructional coach is an educational leader who supports improving their teaching practices and student learning outcomes through collaboration, observation, and feedback, often focusing on specific areas like classroom management, instruction, and assessment. I would tell you that this role really affords me the opportunity to be collaborative with my peers, share my love of problem-solving strategies with my peers, and also my love of organization, which has been great. This job provides me the opportunities to model and co-teach lessons in classrooms with the students, which is always going to be my first love. Through data-driven data meetings, I'm able to work with teachers, and they're able to enlist my support that way to come into the classroom and start a coaching cycle. This summer, I was afforded the opportunity to take a PD at the Harvard School of Continuing Education, and the actual title of the class was Instructional Coaching Through Change. It was my first dabble into this world, so it was a great place to start. It's one of the best courses I've ever taken over my years in education. I really learned a lot about what a coach is, as far as what my role would be, and I think the best thing I can say about it, it's a lot of listening and asking the right questions to help teachers see their full potential. So where I've always worked with children, trying to do that, I'm now implementing that with teachers, which is really a lovely shift. We also just recently attended a seminar out far. I don't know where that was.
I don't know either, Norwood.
No, Harvard, actually, I believe. I think it was something like that. It was very far away. But the MSAA, no, it was really far. But that was an instructional coaching and data analysis meeting as well. I was able to go with school leaders, principals, a few coaches to talk about what's happening in their schools. And then most recently, I made connections with coaches in my own school district. I live in Saugus, and we do have instructional coaches at our elementary and high school level. So I took a chance, made a phone call, and asked if we could meet to talk about what's happening in their schools and challenges that coaches face. This year has been super successful for me. One, because I've been in the building, I think, long enough that I am pretty tenured, so people know me. I've worked as a Title I teacher, so I've been in people's classrooms, so I don't bring any here she is kind of feeling with me. But, you know, when we get into those nitty-gritty kind of conversations, like ways to help me find the right words to help my peers, my colleagues, become more proficient or better at whatever skill they're asking me to help them with. So I started my own little cohort, which is what I just did. And so we had promised that we will now host the Saugus coaches up at our own district because they were interested in our data days, which are fabulous. I've been a part of for a long time as a curriculum coordinator, and they're only getting better. Jody was very true in saying that. So they will be coming back to our district, and then again, we'll do some more reciprocal. I'll go back and observe. They'll come observe me so that it just will help me grow my practice. A coaching cycle. So a teacher can ask me to come and work on a specific skill with them. Right now, it's been born out of those data meetings where we'll see a trend or something happening. They'll say, hey, could you help me with this? And so I'll say, sure. So we've started a coaching cycle. They last about 6 to 8 weeks. All of the protocols and the templates and the data that I collect are things that I've either learned through the class that I took, I've learned from reading online, or things that I just think are right because I kind of have that personality. So I have developed my own templates as well. It starts with a meeting with the teacher, and it's always, what would you like to work on? What are your strengths? What are you most nervous about? How can I help you? I'll go in and I'll observe for at least 2 cycles, if not 2 classes, if not 3, just to get a feel for what's going on. Once that happens, I have another meeting with the teacher and I share my feedback, what I observed, and we'll set a goal. And then that's when the real coaching happens, because then I'll go into the classroom. And so far this year, it has pretty much looked the same always. It has a lot to do with structure, and sometimes it's just a classroom fix. We have to, change some seats, move some desks around, make things a little more fluid, and then we'll start with the lessons, and I'll sit with the teacher and we'll design whatever lesson. If it's ELA, that's really where I focus. I just started dabbling in math. What the curriculum has, what they need, what will work in the classroom, and I'll actually model the lessons for at least 2 weeks. So I'm actually writing and teaching, and the teacher is taking notes, writing down questions, coming up with points I might not have thought about, so we can develop a better lesson. And then I do a gradual release where the teacher will take some more responsibilities back. They'll go back to the part of teaching. I run more of the support piece of it, and then we gradually break off. Once the cycle is done, there are data sheets for the teachers to fill out where they can give their feedback of what they thought of the coaching cycle, where I could improve, how I could have helped them more or not. And so far, it's been really successful. I've been able to coach through each of the trimesters with different teachers. It's looked different in every classroom, which is okay. And I'm looking forward to continuing this project. Teachers are happy, they like the support. I call myself a helper teacher more than I call myself an instructional coach, because that's what I am. I get to go in the classrooms, work with the people who are my friends, and be with the kids, which I do love. The staff feedback and reflections, there are actual sheets that the teachers have to go back in to fill out at the end of a cycle. But I also think, can I sign up for you? When do I get a chance? That's the kind of comment I seem to like the most. So far, the student focus areas have been around increasing engagement in class, experiencing more collaborative learning models. As Jody was speaking, our classrooms don't look like they did maybe 20, 30 years ago. It is a lot of small pod learning. There's always the overarching, this is the big lesson, and then there's the more targeted, smaller group lesson down to the independent level for the children. And also differentiating inside each of those tiers, whether it's the whole group, small group, or independent, there's still differentiation that needs to happen. So I'm the person who comes in and helps with that design as well. I've been very lucky to been asked to do this job or been afforded the opportunity for this job. I'm excited for it, and if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them for you.
I have a question about, do you think, so it's voluntary for teachers to come to you to ask you for the coaching? Or is there any, have you worked with all the different grade levels?
I've worked with multiple different grade levels, not all. I find that working with 2 teachers per cycle is about what my brain capacity. I've tried 3. It just gets muddled, and the scheduling is a lot between 3 different grade levels, but 2 different grade levels and 2 different teachers seems to work right now. And I've been everywhere from grade 1 to grade 5 at this point, so it's been pretty successful.
There's also a purposeful disconnect between supervision and evaluation
Exactly.
and coaching.
So I was gonna,
Purpose-
I mean, that's
a
sort of what I
purposeful
was gonna
disconnect.
ask too, is the principals or admin asking you to go into certain rooms at all? Or that's why it's all voluntary with teachers coming to you?
Right, it's
Right.
data-driven.
Right.
So I'm also the curriculum coordinator for ELA right now, so I'm able to sit in on all those data meetings. And I also collect the data because I'm still part of the data team. So you can see trends with students. You can see what's happening. And if a teacher is feeling like I'm not quite sure why this is happening, I'd like some support around this. It seems to have been happening from those particular meetings. That's where it's come from right now. But admin does not ask me to go in. I'm a peer. I'm not an evaluator. I'm a colleague. And I wouldn't want it any other way. Again, like calling myself a helper teacher, I think is the best way to describe what I do.
I think it also speaks to the level of professional educator that we have in Rockport. So they're in a data meeting, you recognize you're struggling with something, you're in the room, there is a natural human connection and conversation. Like, well, geez, I'm throwing my hands up in the air. I've been doing this work for 15 years, and I can't believe I'm not getting to this kid. Boom. Well, I'd love to help you do that. I'm sure there's an initiation at times, right? And then I reach out and say, yeah, can you come help me? So I think there's a give and a take in a relationship
Yes.
that you're really strong at developing. And I think because people want to be better tomorrow than they are today, generally speaking, that this model is a really nice model.
I'm really glad you came to talk to us about it, because we kind of saw the line item in the budget, and we did not, we trust that it was going to be a great thing and it was needed and all of that, but it's really great to hear you describe it. And it was really interesting to me when you're talking about the coaching cycle, because it kind of seems like a very non-threatening way, because you're up there, you're observing them, then they're observing you, they're also giving you feedback, so it's kind of like the feedback's going back and forth. And so that's a really interesting, when you hear instructional coach, you don't like hearing exactly how it goes was very helpful, because yeah, that seems like a very sort of like non-threatening, like a colleague, like you said, you're not there to evaluate, you're there to, so thank you, this was really helpful.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for both presentations, all 3.
You don't have to stay.
Thank you very much. Good night. Good night.
Thanks. Good night. Okay, school choice.
Just wanted to give you an update. I have not done this update in past years, but we had a unique situation, which again, I just think speaks to the quality of the work we're trying to do in the Rockport Public Schools, that we've had to hold a lottery for the first time in many, 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 many years. So I just wanted to put the data in front of you all. The lottery was actually held this morning, and then we will be contacting families as quickly as possible tomorrow. And I wanted just to contextualize it a little bit for us. So we have 13 school choice students currently in grade 12. So we used to say my first couple of years that, minimally we were hoping that if 13 went out, 13 came in. I know that's a simple math problem for most of us, but that was sort of how we set the bar. We had 39 school choice applications come in this year, and this breaks it down for you: 13 in kindergarten, 6 in third, 7th and 6th, 9th and 4 in 9th grade. Because of that, we had to hold a lottery for grades K, 3, and 7, and we did that this morning. And so we do anticipate that our incoming school choice enrollment will be 27 students, so 12 going out and 27 coming in, which is a really nice, I guess I look at it as a really good vote of confidence that we've got a lot of students and families who are hoping to come to Rockport and value what we're doing here. And I just wanted to spell out the next steps. We've really never talked about this, so I just feel like in the spirit of transparency and communication, you all should know what's going to happen too, in case people are asking you how things go. So applicants get notified status of their application. If you're selected via the lottery, or if you're just given the slot, you have to accept by April 30th. If a family gets back to us and says they're not accepting the open seat, we did pull the lottery in order, and then we will go to the next family on the list and offer the open seat if more than one of the original accepted applicants declines. And that brings our total enrollment next year, we believe, right around 168 students, and that's an increase of 14 school choice students compared to this year's. So if you have any questions, it's pretty straightforward. But
Is there anything to be gained? Is it allowed to go out to try to fill those last 6 ninth grade slots? Is it worth another push? I don't know whether the state of Massachusetts has a time frame and you must complete this in a certain time frame, or whether it's worth it to put that out one more time.
I do believe we are allowed to run a second lottery. Actually, I think it's in your policy as well. I think there's a second lottery in August. I will find out if the parameter allows us to do another ad, so to speak, or another push out there.
If you have 6 more slots.
Right. Yeah. I don't think there's a provision that says we can't. The recommendation is highly made that you do close it at some point, and I think practice here has been different over time around closing it or keeping it open. So as long as I do officially close it, which is my comfort level, I think we could open it up for one more push, particularly because you have a policy language in place that gives me the opportunity to do one more lottery in August, I believe. So I'll find out and get back to you. But yeah, I agree with you.
I mean, we want students, right?
No, I agree with you. Yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions?
Fabulous.
All right.
Sweet. Okay. Let's see what's next on the next is superintendent's evaluation review and approval. Okay. So are you going to hang out for this, Jody? Wow. Okay. Hardcore.
You want me to start with this one?
Yeah, let's start with that. So, for the record, the superintendent has goals that are set at the beginning of the school year. What we see here is the superintendent is being evaluated on each goal. The school committee used a Google form, and we all individually evaluated the superintendent based on these goals. And we're going to go through these. We're going to see the charts, and then I'll read a couple of key comments the school committee did, and then we'll talk about the final evaluation. How does that sound? Okay. So let's go back up to goal 1. Goal 1 is effective update and implementation strategy for the district improvement, for the strategy for district improvement, the SDI. You can see by the bar chart here, a lot of times, a lot of time is spent talking about exceeds and meets and accomplishes the goals. We don't even have to really worry about that in this review. We'll just go into and we'll say that it's clear that Dr. Branco met the goal. There is a document that goes over the evidence that the goals were met. I think just even this conversation that we just had kind of points to the fact that the SDI is very, very strong. I want to read one comment. I try to pick one comment if everybody, and hopefully nobody's upset that I don't pick their comment. But I think it's important to have a chance to show Dr. Branco what's being sent in for his evaluation. And these comments are the comments that are being sent in on the overall evaluation report. And it said the strategies for district improvement were identified, presented, and addressed through growth and achievement data and instructional strategies such as the use of Tier 1 supports, the use of the WIN block, use of data collection, warehousing, and analytics, and the successful integration of the instructional coach. I swear I chose this before tonight's meeting. I did not throw that in there for this. For goal 2, the let's see what goal 2 was for a second here. Yeah, it was pretty clear. Goal 2 was the facilitation of high-value, high-competency initiatives. I'm just going to read the goal for the record. By June 2025, the district will have successfully negotiated a 3-year contract with RESA, completed a full review of the school committee policies with adoption of all updates, facilitated the process of implementing specific communication strategies in connection to the school committee's goals, and 4, developed a fiscally responsible FY26 budget that allows the district to continue to provide each student with an inclusive, high-quality education experience that fosters their academic, social, emotional, and civic development while preparing them for college, career, and/or service, and the service. So the evidence of this is enumerated. The RESA contract was successfully negotiated. With school committee manual review and adoption will occur before the end of the school year. The communication goes on, including the crown jewel of In the Loop newsletter. And the budget development was, well, as Mr. Tobin said, approved. Our budget was approved. And there was a lot of support in the town for the budget. So when we look at goal 2, let me pull a comment from there. We'll choose this one. I'm sorry, my eyes are not so great, so I have to look like this. Dr. Branco excelled in the facilitation of the high-value, high-complexity issues, as evidenced by the successful negotiation of the RESA contract, facilitation of the policy review, and the budget development work with a year of difficult decisions regarding staffing. I believe the facilitation of these issues is the biggest strength of Dr. Branco and should be a model for other superintendents. Okay, we can move on to goal 3, which was, let me catch up with you here in a way that I can actually see. New superintendent induction program. It's clear that Dr. Branco met this goal just with attending all in-person and virtual sessions, completing assignments, and meeting with his coach monthly. I'll pull one comment from goal 3. And engaging with the new superintendent program not only was a benefit to Mark, it directly impacted Rockport School District through the contacts made and mentorship provided to him. I know it took more than his already deeply committed time, but shows his commitment to his personal growth and through that the growth of the district, which I think is really important. And then goal 4, which was, give me a sec, professional development. Okay, it is clear that he excelled in this area as well, met and excelled. The goal was to increase knowledge base and skills related to organizational leadership by participating in or developing and facilitating a variety of professional development and our graduate offerings that related to policy, politics, finance, and teaching and learning, research and education leadership, and facilitating the development of organizational capacity related to the SDI and identified needs of the district. Here is also, I think, an area where we benefited from Mark's experience in this, with your involvement with the Mass Professional Development Committee, handful of conferences and workshops, and along with all your work that you do with SNHU. as well as partnering with SNHU to provide staff with in-house graduate level PD courses that connect with our SDI. So that was awesome. Okay. So then we have these, I hate these next things. These are side quests, if we're going to talk about them that way. They're standards. The first is instructional leadership, and it hits on curriculum, instruction, assessment, evaluation, data-informed decision-making, and student learning. In this area, Dr. Branco met and exceeded. But here we've changed the levels to exemplary and proficient, which nobody likes to be called proficient, but proficient is the second to highest level. So it's proficient and exemplary. The submitted review will be proficient, and one of the comments is the decision made at the district-wide level since Dr. Branco has become superintendent have served to improve data-based best practice and making sure Rockport is up to date with best practices in education. Some examples would be the focus on the curriculum review cycle and addition of a director of teaching and learning to standardize the data-informed decision-making and curriculum adjustments district-wide. Again, did not plan that for tonight. Standard 2 is management and operations, which includes the environment, human resource management and development, scheduling and management, information systems, law, ethics and policies, and fiscal systems. You can see that Dr. Branco is proficient and exemplary in this. His submitted review will list him as exemplary in this area. Dr. Branco's performance in this standard is his greatest strength as a leader of RPS. This was evident by the successful negotiations of the rest of contract review with the policy subcommittee and the work on the budget book. Dr. Branco's work in this area is commendable. Okay. In standard 3,
Can I say one thing
Yeah.
about proficient and exemplary? I just wanted to say,
Yeah.
just for the large crowd that's here and people watching at home, that they proficient is like the NA. So I feel like when you hear the word proficient, like for someone who's not at this table knowing all about this, the people out there, proficient sounds like, yeah, you're fine, but not really. In this sense, it's like you got an A, proficient's an A. So anything above that is like the A plus, exemplary. So I just wanted to.
it is. It's weird how it shifts also in the middle of the review in the two different standards. Standard 3, just when you get used to one, they shift it to the other. Standard 3 is family and community engagement. That includes engagement, sharing responsibility, communication, and family concerns. In this area, you can see by the pie chart, Dr. Branco was rated proficient and exemplary. And the comment we are submitting is the Special Education Parent Advisory Committee is an important avenue for parents to advocate for students. And it's great to see that committee reactivated. Weekly principal newsletters and regular superintendent letters keep parents abreast of school news. Across the system, staff members have stepped up and have shared good news with the community by submitting content to the local newspaper. The new community newsletter, In the Loop, has been very well received and reaches beyond parents to those in the community without school-age children. Standard 4, professional culture. Let's see our pie chart for this one, dude. Okay, we have exemplary and proficient. This standard is made up of commitment to high standards, cultural proficiency, communications, continuous learning, shared vision, and managing culture. Dr. Branco receives an exemplary for this standard, and one of the comments is Dr. Branco had a difficult role entering the district and having to make changes that impact staffing, morale, etc. He has been able to show through his communication, actions, and management that he has the best interests of the students and district at heart, and this is the end goal of his decision making. Okay, and is there one more standard? Nope, that's it. I would like to read the final summative comments for Dr. Branco's review. It'll just be a few more minutes and we'll be all. Let's see if I can read this too. Okay, Dr. Branco's leadership this year meets an exemplary rating. His proactive approach to addressing challenges head on, coupled with his commitment to involving and supporting his team exemplifies a leadership style that should be emulated across the Commonwealth. Despite a period marked by significant change and the loss of valued colleagues, Dr. Branco has maintained a steadfast focus on the future. The progress achieved on each and every goal this school year is a testament to intentional planning and execution. Each objective was crafted to advance Rockport Public Schools toward an inclusive, high-quality educational experience that remains sustainable for our town. Dr. Branco has consistently sought counsel from a diverse group of advisors, including his leadership team, mentors, superintendent peers, the school committee, staff, and students. His trust in his leadership team to realize the district's vision has been evident and should be emulated. In a time of significant change and challenge, Dr. Branco's leadership has been a stabilizing force for Rockport Public Schools. His experience, strategic vision, and organizational acumen have not only guided the district forward, but have also fostered a culture of collaboration. We are deeply grateful for his continued service and leadership. So thank you. Thank you. Okay, what do we have to do next? I would like a motion. I was just picking up my paper here. I'd like a motion to accept the Superintendent Branco's summative evaluation report as presented.
I would like to make that motion.
Second. Okay. All, why do I always have trouble at the end of this? All agreed?
All in favor?
All in favor. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay. I'll also seek a motion for what? Oh, I don't need to do this. Somebody else needs to do this.
Well, you can ask for it, and then someone else.
Okay. Can I have a motion that the chair will meet with Dr. Branco to negotiate possible amendments to his current contract?
Do you want me to say the whole motion, or do you just want me
You can just make the motion.
to? So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you. It's awkward to be evaluated in public.
I love it.
I'm not sure how many professionals get that pleasure, but I I appreciate the feedback. I think I've learned a lot over the first 2 years that I tried to apply into year 3, particularly around communicating with you all as a team and individuals. And I think we need to continue to do that at the highest level for the sake of this school district. So that's really important to me, that the relationships at this table are strong. And that trickles down into the relationships that we have within the school district. So thank you for your time. I at least get paid to do this work. And I do, that this is a volunteer organization, and I love working with you all, and I thank you for your time as well. So thank you for the evaluation. I appreciate it.
Okay, do we have a need for a finance update? No?
No.
Okay. Okay. Any other school committee discussion? I look towards you. Okay. Okay. Do we have a need for executive session?
I do not.
Okay. So ends this evening's Rockport School Committee meeting. Thank you.
I'd make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, thank you so much. You're going to be so great at this.
I'll second that motion. Oh, you're going to make the motion, or you did?
She made the motion.
She made it. I'll second it.
You second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you.